Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Just admiring your very nice Rose Bowl hat. Yesterday, I should have commented on yesterday's show. You had your SHI hat, which was I don't want to say pilfered because pilfered. Well, the statute of limitations
Purloined?
probably run out. Purloined from the press box at Rutgers Stadium of the same name a number of years ago, but again outside the statute of limitations. So yeah, I think yeah, boy, this is very much a who are three people who've never been in my kitchen. We go from Rutgers to the Rose Bowl. So boy, I can't wait to see what tomorrow's hat is. NASA? I don't know.
I don't believe stealing is actually illegal in New Jersey, so I think I'm okay.
Not if it falls off the back of a truck. That's enshrined in the New
Hey!
Jersey State Constitution. Hey,
So we are back. We've got another listener questions show for you, wrapping up a call that I made out while we were at Big Ten Media Days, and we were never able to actually get to all of the questions. So we're going to knock them out today. Get and then clean slate. Then it's time for fall camp, and not that some of this doesn't deal with fall camp. There's some quarterback talk here, so in fact that's probably going to be what the title is, something about the quarterback. And but first, Tom, we have to talk about Caleb Downs.
no, we don't have to talk about Caleb Downs. We get to talk about Caleb Downs. That's one of the
Yes.
fun things to talk about on this year's Ohio State team. The first question is from at Buckeye AM, and this is a multi-parter. So we'll break this down one piece at a time. We'll kind of do these sort of in quick succession. First part: will Caleb Downs see any time on offense? Tony, I say no.
I say no also, and then if you want to get into a longer discussion, what is the situation that would require? And it's probably a situation where you've got some injured running backs who now would you rather turn to a true freshman or turn to Caleb Downs? And even then, the answer is probably still a true freshman, given what he means for you on defense. Or would you need him at slot receiver? Ohio State's got a bunch of slot receivers, so I just don't see, knock wood here. It would take a lot to get him on the field on offense.
Yeah, the only scenario I could really see it outside of like you said, a real disaster scenario in terms of injuries would be he's up for
Mm-hmm.
fill in the blank national award, and he returns a punt for a touchdown, and then he has an interception return for a touchdown, and then you put him out there in the second quarter against Rutgers, and you're going to throw in the ball for a touchdown, or you're going to take an end around for a touchdown or something like that. So it's like, oh, look, he scored touchdowns three different ways. And, the most, it worked for Travis Howard. Now, Travis Howard did this like as a full-time thing last year, but it worked for Travis Howard last year.
Hunter.
So, maybe in that scenario, but even in that scenario, the Rutgers game is the week before the Michigan game. Like, can you imagine what would happen if Caleb Downs is out there as in the shotgun formation and sprains his ankle or something like that, and it's the week before Michigan, and then you don't have him because you were trying to run some gimmicky something to bolster his Heisman campaign or whatever it is. Like that feels like a risk reward calculus that would probably end up with like, nah, we good, but if you could potentially see something like that. I'm not expecting it again. I think the answer is no, but that's another scenario where you could theoretically see it.
Not just a sprained ankle, but if you do that against Rutgers, there's a danger of getting a leg broken or something of that nature. So just be careful who you try to show up.
How did he break his leg, Tony? He fell off the back of a truck. Forget
Hey,
about it. Next up, uh, why is Penn State picked ahead of Ohio State when Drew Allar is clearly not very good? Again, this is from at Buckeye AM. And I think the answer is Penn State has a whole lot of talent. Penn State is basically 2023 Michigan brought back all sorts of guys, veteran guys, for one more run at it and won the national championship. Ohio State 2024 brought back all sorts of veteran guys for one more run at it, won the national championship. Penn State this year, kind of the same thing. You've got Nick Singleton, you got Katron Allen, so you got the incredible running back duo that Ohio State had last year. They've got their offensive line looks pretty good. They've brought in a bunch of transfers at wide receiver. How will they play? We'll see. I don't know, but it seems like they've brought in. They have done their best to address the issues they had at wide receiver last year. The defense looks like it should be pretty good. You've got talented players at all the different levels of the defense. You got a couple really good defensive linemen. Linebacker, they're feeling pretty good about. You got Zachy Wheatley in the secondary. You've got a pretty well-rounded team. Are there questions? Yeah, sure. Drew Allar, how good is Drew Allar? Is he the 5-star number 1 quarterback? We haven't seen it yet, but he really didn't have wide receivers last year. So I think they can put him in a position where he doesn't have to be 2022 CJ Stroud. He can just be, if he's 2024 Will Howard, he can be fine. Like, that might be enough for him this year. He's going to have running backs that he can lean on. He's going to have a defense that they're not going to have to score 38 points a game. They're going to be able to score probably 28 points a game, and the defense should be pretty darn good. I don't know if it's going to be like 10 points a game good with under Jim Knowles, but I think it might be 14 points a game, 17 points a game, where you get to 28. That's probably enough to win most of your games this year. So I don't think he's going to have to do it. This is not a guarantee that it's going to happen for Penn State. There are no guarantees this time of year, but Penn State is about as well situated as some of the recent national champions have been, and is well situated in the same kind of way that some of the recent national champions have been. So, they have Oregon at home, they have Ohio State on the road. Everything else, they're going to be a decent favorite. Doesn't mean they can't lose another one somewhere, but if they split those 2 games, they can still lose another game somewhere and then make it in. And then you're the veteran team that's pretty deep and pretty talented and going in potentially hot into a college football playoff. And we have seen how that goes in the 12-team format.
Ohio State right now, one of just a handful of teams that are expected to be favored in every game. 5 teams, one of 5 teams this year. Penn State, not one of those because they come to Ohio State. I'm not surprised that Penn State is the popular pick. I'm surprised that they are the absolute unanimous pick. That from everyone I've seen, I have not seen any outlet pick Ohio State, which is a little surprising given that Penn State goes to Ohio State. But as you said, one of the things that we look for is, do I know your quarterback? Yes. Okay, he's a returning starter. All right. And you've got some starters that decided to come back. Okay, well, we saw what happened the past 2 years, and boom, this is the formula. Nothing could possibly go wrong with the formula. And I think it's a little simplistic, but again, like, we are all simple people when we're just looking for some preseason stuff. I do think it's surprising how over the top favorite they are, given their ability to be a favorite and not play like it in big games.
Well, and I think you look at the Big Ten media picked Penn State to win, but I think they got picked by like 1 vote over Ohio State. It wasn't unanimous that Penn State was going to win the Big Ten. And when you're trying to sell magazines, something that's a little different probably helps sell some magazines. So that might be a little bit of a tiebreaker for you. So, but like I said, there is a legitimate case that they are the best team and that they have the best chance. And that's I think how you kind of have to look at this. You got to look at this as a probability thing, not as this is a black and white. This is either this or this. The balance of probability, maybe it's Penn State is 52% likely to win the Big Ten and Ohio State is 48%. I mean, obviously, other teams have a chance to win, but it's 42% for Penn State and 38% for Ohio State, and I don't know. I'm not going to throw out the other numbers, but X% for Oregon and Y% for Michigan and Z% for Illinois or whoever else, and so it's not a yes, everyone's picking them, but I don't know that means everyone thinks this is a lead pipe cinch lock. It's just, of all the possibilities, this is the most likely, but it's probably a plurality and not a majority of, you do your 10,000 scenarios and Penn State wins 32% of the time and Ohio State wins 28% of the time. And it's not Penn State's going to win 100% of the time. That's not how people, even if that's what you see on the magazines, that's not actually what they probably think. We're going to hit the last couple here from at Buckeye AM in quick succession. I predict Jaden Fielding will be the first-team Big Ten kicker. Ryan Day will not be selected Big Ten Coach of the Year. It will be Bielema. And Ohio State wins in the Big House 28-24. Tony, rank those 3 in order of likelihood.
The least likely is nailing the exact score.
Yes.
So we'll put that third. I also think that's a high score. I would I think Bielema winning Coach of the Year is more likely than Fielding. So I'd go Bielema, Fielding, than the 28-24. I do think Jaden Fielding can be first team All Big Ten. Certainly Brett Bielema, if he wins 10, 11 games at Illinois, he's going to have a good shot. I'd throw Matt Rule in there as well. Another guy who even maybe more likely if he can get to 10 wins because nobody's expecting it. As we know, that's doing the most with the least. And right now, Brett Bielema has some expectations, which hurts his chances.
And, picking an Ohio State coach to not win Big Ten Coach of the Year is, it's like betting on, betting on the 1 seed on the money line against the 16 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think one Ohio State coach has won the Big Ten Coach of the Year since 1979. Is that right?
Did Ryan Day finally win it in like 2019?
I think Ryan Day won it in 2019 because I haven't seen the not since Earl Bruce in 1979 stat for a while. So I think Ryan Day did win it one time.
Tied with PJ Fleck.
Yeah, well, that sounds about right. So yes, it can be done, but it has been done half of a time since 1979. So yeah, that's Bielema winning it. I think is a good shout there. Jaden Fielding winning first team All Big Ten kicker. Does he hit a 50-yarder in a really crucial spot? Because I don't know that Jaden Fielding winning first team All Big Ten kicker would be a good thing for Ohio State because generally that's going to be, boy, you hit a ton of field goals. If he's 5 for 6 on field goals this year, that's probably a very good thing for Ohio State because it means they're punching the ball in the end zone. But it's not a good thing for winning the Big Ten Kicker of the Year. If he hits a 50-yarder at the gun against Michigan, and that might push you over the line to a certain degree. But it feels to me like Iowa's kicker is going to win the Big Ten Kicker of the Year just because you're going to have 17 made field goals out of 20 or whatever it is because you're constantly settling for field goals. I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing for your overall team. So there you go. All right, next up from @BuckeyeKid09, does Lincoln Kienholz really have a chance to win the job?
Yes. Like one of the things that Ryan Day said this past week at Big Ten Media Days is he was looking forward to seeing who comes out of summer workouts as Iron Buckeyes and who's gold. And gold is also really, really good. And we saw Lincoln Kienholz this week or this past week as one of the dudes of the week, one of the 3 guys that had a really good week in the weight room. I don't know that we've ever seen Julian Sand as a dude of the week. Tom, can you do you recall that? Because I don't. Now, am I paying attention to the dudes of the week religiously?
Yeah, it's not. I do not have an encyclopedic knowledge of the dude of the week winners, but I cannot recall him winning one off the top of my head. And I should have lumped this other one from @Sean34 in here as well. I'm starting to think Kienholz has an actual chance. He's such an amazing athlete, and he's swole up now. You think he has a 50-50 chance. I would say Sayan came out of spring ball a little ahead, so I'd put it a little less than 50-50 for Kienholz. But the idea of him being an incredible athlete is absolutely true. Ryan Day talked about him a bunch at Big Ten Media Days and talked about just he was a Major League Baseball prospect. He can windmill dunk on the basketball court. I think he was like a track star there in high school as well. And then, also was a state championship winning quarterback on his high school football team. So just one of those, and he's like a 3 handicap golfer or something like that. It's just one of those people who you just hate because he's good at everything, but then you can't hate because he's also a really nice kid. So he has a lot of the stuff that you would want to be, to have as your quarterback. And I think is well liked on the team and all of that. And so I think this is legitimately an open competition for the quarterback. I would say Sayan having come out of the spring ahead, you would assume he's going into the fall a little ahead, give or take. But yes, I do think this is still an open competition. And, I go back to 2023 where you went into fall camp and Kyle McCord was ahead, and then there was this week where Kyle McCord just didn't have a good week, and Devin Brown had a really good week, and everyone kind of went, whoa, hey, and then Kyle McCord ended up winning the job back. But there was a point where it was like, is this going to be Devin Brown after all this time thinking that this was going to be Kyle McCord? And, and that turned out the way it turned out, and, so you ended up with the favorite winning the job. But I think there was a little bit of a legitimate question in the middle of camp that year, and I think there is going to be at least a little bit of a legitimate question at some point during camp this year as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And in terms of the athleticism, Lincoln Kienholz threw for 9,000 yards in high school and rushed for 3,000. As a senior, he threw for he rushed for like 1,400 yards, to give you an idea of what he can do. And so he's a mobile guy. And would he be the better fit behind an offensive line that was questionable? Maybe. That way, you've got somebody that can be mobile. But back to in terms of the summer that he had, Ryan Day wants a leader, and the leaders show up in those workouts. So we'll see if he makes it gold or whatever, and the kind of starts taking the step forward with his teammates. And that's something that both quarterbacks were working on all summer, is leading their teammates. So that's something where Ryan Day said, in terms of naming a starting quarterback, he'll know like when the locker room knows, like when the locker room has adopted one of them, you'll have a pretty good idea. So 50-50, I think Julian Sain is still the guy that is more likely to win the job. So I would say no to that. But again, I think he has a real shot, because Julian Sain has not done enough yet to win the job.
Right. I think you're at the point where Ryan Day kind of has there is a finish line in Ryan Day's head, and it's just a matter of which guy gets there first. And they're both running for it right now, but neither of them is there. And so it's still anyone's race, regardless of whether Julian Sain's potentially a step or two ahead right now. So there's that. And then we have a 3-parter from Old Pete 1926. Boy, there is some spice here. Number 1, will Bryce Underwood, Michigan quarterback, bolt if Michigan gets a multi-year bowl ban? And boy, this one, Tony, there's so many, well, it depends in this, that I feel like we should start qualifying with if they get a multi-year bowl ban. And, how likely is that? It's possible. I don't know that I would call it particularly likely, but it's certainly possible. And there's not a ton of precedent to look at in terms of punishments for this specific thing, and how serious is it going to be? How serious is the punishment going to be, and how do they want it to be backward facing punishments or forward facing punishments? And so there's a lot there to get through. But let's just hypothetically say they get a multi-year bowl ban. They're ineligible for the postseason in 2025 and 2026. So then that's the first 2 years of Bryce Underwood's career. So then my question would be, can I see his NIL contract? And is he locked in there for 2 years? Is there a clause that if they get a postseason ban, he can get out? Is there a clause that, he has to pay back all of the money that he's taken if he leaves? Or I haven't seen the contract, so that would make it a very difficult thing for me to judge. It's not like he was forever. He and Michigan were love at first sight, and he was forever betrothed to Michigan, and that that he never considered anywhere else. He was committed to LSU until very, very late in the process. So, could LSU or someone else say, "Hey, remember us? Want to come down and play for us?" And we also have bags with dollar signs on them. Like you could, potentially, sure. In terms of the likelihood of that happening, if he's happy where he is, and he's and there's stability with the rest of the program, is Sherrone Moore still the head coach, or does Sherrone Moore have to depart for one way or another as a result of this stuff? Is there stability with the other players, or is there a mass exodus with other guys? Because Bryce Underwood has another year after that, where he could be, you sit through 2 years and then you can play in 27 and you can play for the national championship potentially that year. That might be enough to keep him around. But if everyone else leaves, you lose they brought in a 5-star tackle in 25, right? Or is it 26? One of those guys. So one of those years. So maybe if that guy bolts, well, then does that change things? So there's just a lot of moving pieces here. I would not say, yes, I think this exact sequence of events is likely. Is it possible? Sure. But there are so many different, well, if this, then that I would say, right, the specific sequence of events laid out here, multi-year postseason ban for Michigan, and Bryce Underwood bolts before his, as a result of that, is not super likely. You could, this is like the Swiss cheese thing where Swiss cheese has lots of holes in it, and you can the holes sometimes will line up, and then it's like a real long hole kind of thing. That's
Mm.
this is like an explanation for how air crashes happen. So this is not exactly exactly head to head, but it's like you need all these different things to go wrong in order for a plane to crash. This is the kind of thing where you need this to happen, and then this to happen, and then this to happen, and then this happen. So I will say no, but yeah, I mean it's possible.
Yeah, it's definitely an if this then this type of thing. Like you said, I would like to see the deal that the third uncle got signed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I assume this is a real agent because of the numbers. We're talking what was it 12 million or something like that. So that's a lot, and I do wonder if an agent is able to put a clause in there about the NCAA. It's not like this is a secret in terms of possible sanctions coming. There will be sanctions coming. Do you want to protect yourself, or is it the Don Draper thing that we talked about? That's what the money's for. I'm sorry you're only playing 12 games this year. That's what the money's for. Or does it become also a situation where a team is willing to pay the buyout? And is the buyout the entirety of that contract, or is it a fraction of it because now Michigan no longer has to pay him because, whatever has been paid up front maybe is what. So, yeah, without knowing it, but I would say if there's a 2-year postseason ban and it's cheap enough for him to transfer, yeah, he's gone. Because then you're talking about he's only planning on being there 3 years. He's planning on being college football for 3 years. So only one of those years he's going to be playing in the postseason. And the other thing, Tom, if he's okay with not playing in the postseason, isn't that a big red flag as well?
Yeah, well, you have the hashtag the will to win, questions, and we're delving into first take kind of takery right here. But it is you'll have people who will definitely make that argument, and then the opposite argument there is, well, then he quit on his team, he quit on his teammates, and so you can be Skip and I can be Stephen A, or the other way around. But we're gonna, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna have to do a little more hollering. Which the next question we can do some hollering about the next question. Once again from @oldpete1926, is it too soon to call Dylan Raiola a bust? This is a first take question if ever I've seen one.
Yeah, I read that. I'm like, what's he done? He started as a true freshman, threw for 2,800 yards, more than any true freshman in the Big Ten in recent years, maybe ever. And maybe that's something I could just go look on his Nebraska Huskers bio page. It would say threw for the most yards for a true freshman quarterback in Big Ten history, because it's more than Chad Henne in 2004. It's more than the, I think, 45 yards that Anthony Morelli threw in 2004 as well. It's more than Terrell Pryor, Braxton Miller. I guess go check out Nathan Shielhaus or Adam Weber. Maybe Adam Weber, is so like these are the vaunted names. But no, like I don't think 13 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. He did not have a ton of help around him, but I don't think anything he did was enough or less than whatever to be named a bust. I think he's going to be pretty darn good, and everything that he learned last year is going to be applicable to this year. So I'm expecting a better year this year. I'm not expecting a sophomore slump type of thing, and certainly I would need to see more before I thought he was a bust.
Skip, that's where you're wrong. No, it's. I mean, man, if I could somehow weave LeBron in here, I would, but I don't think I've got it in me tonight. Sorry. I think you have to look at true freshmen, and you got to grade true freshmen on a curve. And we can go back to the Bryce Underwood thing. Like, I think Bryce Underwood is a incredibly talented athlete. Bryce Underwood is going to lose Michigan a game at some point this year. Like, single-handedly lose Michigan a game this year. That's what true freshman quarterbacks do. You're going to have stuff that's like, well, this guy was open on film every time I watched it this week. I'm sure it's going to be open today. And hey, where did that safety come from? Like, you're going to have that stuff happens. that's what happens with true freshman quarterbacks. That's why the list of true freshman quarterbacks that Tony was listing was not a very long one, because you don't generally throw those guys in there. And as Tony said, he didn't have great skill talent around him on offense last year. And even so, they had the best season that Nebraska's had in since 2017, 2016. I mean, this is the bar for a successful season at Nebraska is not, well, they better be 11-1 or better. It is, they'd better make a bowl game, and they did, and they won their bowl game. They beat BC in the Pinstripe Bowl last year, and Nebraska fans were thrilled because that was the best season they'd have in a long time. I'm expecting a step forward from Dylan Raiola this year, a significant step forward, I think, from Dylan Raiola this year. That doesn't mean he's going to throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns against 4 interceptions. But if he goes from 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions to 24 touchdowns and 8 interceptions or 6 interceptions, yeah, that's a pretty good season. And then maybe you're 30 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in your third year, and you go from 6 wins to 8 wins to 10 wins or something like that. And yeah, I think it's way too soon to look at him and make any kind of a negative prognostication just based on the fact that he had a rough true freshman year, because that's what true freshman years look like for quarterbacks in the Big Ten.
Adam Weber did throw for a few more yards, but I can't remember. He may have been a redshirt freshman. Another big-time true freshman quarterback in Big Ten history, Matt Barkley, 2009 USC. He threw for fewer yards, 2,735 yards, threw for 2 more touchdowns, 3 more interceptions as a true freshman. Of course, had the big win in Ohio Stadium, as everybody remembers.
Classic Big Ten matchup. And finally, can Penn State win the Big Ten if their quarterback is not as good as Ohio State's quarterback? And we got a question about this on yesterday's show. So this is a little bit of a different, spin on it, I guess. But do they need their quarterback to be as good as Ohio State's quarterback? I mean, maybe. I think the Penn State defense is going to be very good this year. I think the Penn State run game is going to be very good this year. I think if Penn State's quarterback is as good as Ohio State's quarterback in 2024, I think they can win the national championship. I think we can maybe you can be a little not quite as good as Will Howard and still win the national championship. But I think that Will Howard is kind of the line to me rather than Julian saying, because there are areas where I think Penn State probably has some advantages talent-wise over Ohio State this year, especially in terms of returning production and some stuff in the trenches. I think they've got at least a push. So I don't know that he needs to be better than Julian Sayin or Lincoln Kienholz, but he just needs to be because Lincoln Kienholz or Julian Sayin could be better than Will Howard. That's entirely possible. But he needs to be Will Howard good. He needs to be. You can win. Lots of teams have won the national championship without having Joe Burrow as their quarterback, and so you just need to be that good. I think that's the measuring stick I'd use rather than however good Ohio State's quarterback is this year.
Well, and Will Howard was considerably better at everything in every statistical measure than Drew Allar last year, except that Howard threw 2 more interceptions. And Penn State made it to the Big Ten championship game. Now, I guess, did they need a better performance from Allar? It wouldn't have hurt, but I think you can win it without doing better than Ohio State's quarterback, because Penn State made it further in the Big Ten than Ohio State did with a lesser quarterback. So certainly they could have gotten a few snaps here or there, even though Oregon got out to a pretty big lead. I don't think you need to have a quarterback as good as Ohio State's to win it, because you got some good running game, you've got a good defense, and so I'd say no. It's a really interesting question though, because generally you need a pretty good quarterback, and Ohio State generally has a pretty good quarterback. But again, if Drew Allar isn't as good as Julian Sayin or Lincoln Kienholz this year, do they have? That's not a great sign, even though we have high expectations for the Ohio State quarterback. Drew Allar, I heard Adam Brenneman on the radio today talking about how Drew Allar is the best returning quarterback in the nation. And I'm like, I understand you played at Penn State, but that's a bold and false proclamation based on some of the other quarterbacks that are returning nationally. But if he's not as good as what Ohio State's got going out there, boy, I don't think that's great. And that's feels kind of a slam on the Ohio State quarterbacks. But Drew Allar in his final year as a starter, this is his third year as a starter. He should be better than a first-year starter.
He should, yes. And, I don't know that they need him to be, but he should be. You have the, you have the 5-star pedigree, which means you have the strong arm. This is not just, it's the guy who's been around for a million years, and he's just been around for a million years because he's been around for a million years, and he wasn't going to get drafted last year. Like Allar was, there was a bunch of different kind of talking points on where exactly Drew Allar's draft grade was, even from the different Penn State people at Big Ten media days. But he was going to be, he was going to be picked he probably would have been picked ahead of Will Howard last year, just based on some of his traits and arm strength and that kind of stuff. If he can put it together, he kind of has the pieces there. But we've seen so many quarterbacks over the year have, Quinn Ewers was going to, he had all the traits you want. He was the perfect rated quarterback prospect, and then just kind of got to a certain point, and that was kind of it. And that was working with Sark, who's a pretty darn good quarterback coach. And Penn State's offensive staff is good, but it's they don't have like super renowned Sark or Ryan Day or Lane Kiffin or someone there working with Allar. So I think it's a little bit of an open question. I don't think he has to be perfect. I don't think he has to be amazing, but I think he can be. I certainly think he can be good enough. He just needs to take a step forward. I don't think he needs to take 4 running leaps forward. I think he needs to take like 1 or 2 more steps forward. They're throws that you kind of watch and you go, come on, you can't, you're 10 yards off on this throw. Like you gotta be able to get a little closer than that. But it doesn't have to be an incredible overnight transformation. It just has to be take another step forward. And I think that would be good enough.
I do wonder if he needs to be better than he was last year to win the Big Ten. I think that would be a fair statement as well, even though I think maybe without Oregon potentially being in the way, maybe nobody needs to be as good this year to win the Big Ten. But if Drew Allar doesn't take a step forward, then it doesn't matter if you win the Big Ten. That's about all you're going to win. So there you go. We have defeated the listeners once again. Thank you for all those questions. We always do appreciate it, not just because it makes it easier on us, but especially because it makes it easier on us. So now that we'll drop these 2 shows, this one and the previous the one that we've recorded, now it's clean slate. We're ready to talk camp, what we're seeing. Definitely take your questions once we start getting that info out to you in terms of what we're seeing and what you're hearing and reading. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. Hit that thumbs up if you've not yet done so. Hit the bell to be notified if you're watching on YouTube. And, of course, if you're listening via your podcast platform of choice, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does help us, I'm told, so we would appreciate that. And, of course, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Love to see you there. Join up now. Say hello to us at the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. Got a lot going on there at Buckeye Huddle. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.